We've made it all the way down to Module 3 now, and we're going to talk in this module about different ways to customize the QuickBooks environment. I wanted to start off in this first video, which is the preferences, and talk to you a little bit about the options that you can change that make working with QuickBooks a little bit easier. A lot of these options we're going to talk about in this preferences section are going to be options that you told it in the Easy Step interview you did or did not want to turn on or off. There are two parts to this, so make sure you watch both parts so that you get a full idea of all the preferences that are available for you to work with. Let's go ahead and start now with Preferences Part 1. When you first set up your company file, you went through the Easy Step interview. In that Easy Step interview, it asked you a series of questions, and based on how you answered those questions, it turned icons on or off on your home screen. For example, if you told it that you do not estimate jobs, you wouldn't have this estimates icon here. You can turn most of these on or off in the preferences, along with some other things you're going to see that will make QuickBooks a lot easier for you to use. Let's head on over to the preferences. We're going to click on Edit from the menu and come down to Preferences. You'll notice there are several options on the left that you can click on. Each of these will have a tab that says My Preferences or Company Preferences when you click on them. Let's start at the top with Accounting and we'll work our way down. You'll notice under Accounting there are no options under My Preferences. I'll go ahead and click on Company Preferences. And there are a few here that you'll want to know about. Let's take a peek at this first one, Use Account Numbers. This has to do with using general ledger numbers in your chart of accounts. I'm going to cancel this for a moment and just go over to the chart of accounts right here just to show you what it currently looks like. This is what we call your chart of accounts. It's the most important part of QuickBooks. We're going to spend more time talking about this in videos 4, 5, and 6 in this module. But for now, what I want you to notice is that there are different types of accounts. And if you have a type that's the same, like these fixed assets, there are two of these, then you'll notice the names of these two are in alphabetical order. Once you turn on the general ledger numbers, they're going to be in numerical order. I'm going to head back to Edit and back to Preferences. Under Company Preferences, I'm going to check the box next to Use Account Numbers and click OK. And now you'll see next to each of these you have general ledger numbers. You can edit these numbers, but for now, you'll see the generic ones that QuickBooks decided to use. Notice they're in numerical order based on the type. I'm going to head back to Edit and head back to Preferences. Same place, back under Accounting, I'm going back to the Company Preferences. Here's another one that you may want to use. Not every type of business will use this class feature, but if you need it, it's a really great option. Here's some examples of how this would work. Let's say that your business has 3 locations, and you would like to track your reports based on location. You could have a class list set up that would list each of the locations, and each time you create a new transaction, you can choose the location that that transaction goes to. And that's a great way to run a report on the whole company, or if you want to use it to run a report just on those different locations, you can do that as well. If you start entering transactions that are 90 days in the past, as far as the date is concerned, or in the future, you will see that it will pop up and warn you. And if you don't want it to do that, maybe you're entering a lot of things that are over 90 days old, then you can just come in and uncheck these. I did also want to mention this date through which the books are closed. In real life accounting, you close the books at the end of every month and you close the books at the end of the year. If you had closed the books through the end of the month and you see a mistake in a prior closed period, you would make an offsetting entry in the current period to adjust for that. QuickBooks will not automatically close your books. It's not going to warn you. It's not going to say anything. If you want to close the books, you have to come here. You would set a date and a password. For example, this might say December the 31st of 2021, and then of course you would have a password here. What would happen is if someone went to make a change in that closed period, it would pop up and say, you've closed the books through such and such date. do you still want to make that change? And if you knew the password, you could do that. Let's jump down on the left to the General option, and I'm going to click on the My Preferences tab. This very first one, I always suggest that you turn on. It says pressing Enter to move between the fields. If you do not have this on, what will happen is you will be working in a form. Let's say you're in an invoice, for example, and you're thinking that by hitting the Enter key, you're going to move to the next field. What will actually happen is you will save and close, and your screen will disappear, and you'll wonder what happened. If you turn this on, you can use the Enter key or the Tab key to move between your fields. There are several other options you might want to just take a peek at right up here. I do want to mention this one here, automatically recall last transaction for this name. This is a good one because it will save you some work and keep your accounting consistent. Let's say that you had previously filled out a check for your electric company. What would happen is the next time you went to write a check and you put in that vendor name, it will automatically fill all the information from the last time you used that vendor name, and all you would really need to do is change the amount of money and save it. Save you a lot of time. Here's another one that you probably want to turn on. Use today's date as default. If you don't turn this on, then whatever the last date you entered on one of your transactions, that's going to use the same date when you go to the next transaction. Let's look now at items and inventory. There are no options under My Preferences. I'll click on the Company Preferences tab. If you remember, one of the questions in the Easy Step interview asked if you actually track inventory. If you had said no, none of these options would be checked and they wouldn't show up on your home screen. Here, by checking all of these, you're going to see options for purchase orders, and you'll also be able to enter invoices, and you'll be able to track inventory as well. The next one down says jobs and estimates. If you happen to work with different jobs in your business, construction being a prime example, then you may have different terminology for these. You can go in and change that terminology if you want. And here's the question about estimates. Do you create estimates, yes or no? And over here is the progress invoicing question. If you create estimates, you probably do want progress invoicing. The next one down I want to mention is payments. And you'll notice sometimes when you make a change that it will pop up and ask you if you want to save your changes. I'm going to say yes here. And sometimes it will have to close all the windows to make this change. I'll just click OK. And now we're on the payments option. One of the things QuickBooks will do is when you receive a payment for a customer and you want to enter that payment, you're going to see in that payment window a list of invoices. You'll see the oldest on down, and QuickBooks will automatically apply the payments to the oldest ones. You may not want it to do that. You may want to manually apply the payments to those invoices. The other thing it will do is it will automatically put that payment in an account in your chart of accounts called undeposited funds. If you don't want to do that, then you can uncheck that here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. You'll see here that your customers can pay you online. You can actually send them an invoice. You can send it through email, and it will have a button where the customer can click to pay you automatically with their credit card or bank transfer, and you can actually set that up with Intuit. Also down here where it says payment reminders, if you wanted to send reminders to your customers that they have payments that are due, you can do that, and it will prompt you at a certain time of day. And also if you want to prompt you daily or weekly, you can set that up as well right here. Now let's go over to payroll and employees. If you're going to be using payroll through Intuit, you would have to actually set that up with Intuit. It is not free, it is subscription based. But if you're going to use that, here's a couple of preferences. If you're going to use the full payroll option, you'll click here, and that will turn on some options on your home screen so that you can go ahead and set up some of your payroll. If not, you can leave it on no payroll. You also have some options over here for pay stubs, for workers' comp, and sick and vacation time. Down here at the bottom, you can display your employee list by first name, last name, and you'll see there's some other options here that you may want to just look at if you decide you're going to run your payroll through QuickBooks. The next option I want to look at over on the left are your reminders. Notice I made a change in the payroll section, so it asks me if I want to save those changes. I will say yes here. And then you'll see some options pop up about reminders. This is a list of different items that QuickBooks can remind you of. Reminders do not show up automatically. Where they show up is when you first open the company file. If you've told QuickBooks to remind you, you will see a window that pops up that will have those reminders in that window. Once you close it again, you don't see that until the next time you open QuickBooks. You can see here that there are checks to print, there's overdue invoices, options to be reminded about inventory to reorder, money to deposit. You can see the options there. You can have QuickBooks show you in that window a summary of all the checks to print, for example. You might want an individual list of each of the checks to print, or you can say don't remind me at all. If you have told it to remind you of some of these options, then you can go next to each one of these and tell it how many days before or after that you want it to remind you of that option. So you just go through here and set all of your choices for reminders. Let's go ahead and stop the video right here. I want to go ahead and look at part 2, and we'll continue talking about the remainder of these preferences.